to another podcast episode from the Association of Materials Protection and Performance. My name is Sammy Miles, and I'm the Managing Editor-in-Chief of Corrosion Journal, AMP's peer-reviewed scientific journal. Today's episode of Corrosion Journal interview series will discuss current trends in magnesium research, which is the topic of our February issue. I'm joined by Professors Joey Kish from McMaster University and Geraint Williams from Swansea University, who both served as guest editors for the issue. Thanks for joining me today.
Right, a bit about me. I'm also a professor of material science and engineering at Swansea University. I'm part of the Faculty of Science and Engineering. I'm also currently the head of materials within the faculty. And my research interests are in corrosion science, with a particular emphasis on mechanisms of corrosion of light alloys, including, of course, magnesium. Also, the use of advanced electrochemical scanning techniques in corrosion research, and a final interest in new or novel technologies for protective organic coatings. I've got a research group of about 10 postgraduate students and a couple of postdocs, and I've been active in corrosion science for just about 20 years now.
So how did you both get into studying magnesium and its alloys?
Oh, I'll start there. So when I arrived at McMaster, they had just established the GM Center for Automotive Materials and Corrosion. And I was brought in to fill the corrosion research position that was tied to the chair. So GM had a real strong interest in lightweight alloys, particularly magnesium. So right from the get-go, when I started at McMaster, I had a research thrust in the corrosion of magnesium and magnesium alloys. The focus was really on sheet metal product and deriving protective coating schemes for sheet metal magnesium corrosion. So like I say, right from day one, it's been a strong focus on magnesium corrosion and its control. Sorry, Gary, go ahead.
The field is slightly different, more by accident than design. I've been a corrosion researcher for probably about 6 or 7 years before magnesium came onto my radar. We'd been using, or our sort of bread and butter at Swansea is using these advanced scanning electrochemical techniques like scanning vibrating electrode and scanning Kelvin probe in various areas of corrosion research, usually coatings or stainless steels or aluminium alloys. But it's only when I went to, it wasn't NACE actually, it was an international corrosion congress, I think in China. And I just walked into a lecture theatre at random, and there were some talks on magnesium. And I thought, well, there were some really interesting questions that were needed to be answered about magnesium corrosion. And I thought some of our advanced electrochemical scanning techniques could actually help. So I got back from China. First thing I did was buy a bit of magnesium foil, immerse it in sodium chloride, scan it with a scanning vibrating electrode, and hey presto, that was our first paper. So that's how I got into it. And now we're actually funded to do some magnesium alloy corrosion research. But this was probably a hobby back then, about 15 years ago.
Oh, that's fantastic. So the different branches to get into studying the alloys. As I mentioned in the introduction, our February 2021 issue of Corrosion focuses on magnesium alloys. And this is actually the 4th special issue we've had that explores magnesium alloys, and the second one that both of y'all have served as guest editors on. Could one of you provide some insight as to why there's been so much attention on the topic, not just from Corrosion Journal, but really at the research community in general?
Can I punt that one to you, Joey, as a person who actually
okay, I think magnesium, from an engineering materials perspective, it's lightweight, it's really low density, that really is an attraction. So with this whole push in sustainable development, lightweighting materials and their applications sees it's a potential pathway to address these issues. And so I'm heavily tied to the transportation industry. And so that is one of the major thrusts in improving fuel economy is lightweight, making the cars or the vehicles lighter, and magnesium alloys have been of immense interest to achieve those goals. So you get more bang for your lightweighting dollar with magnesium than you do with aluminum or high strength steel. So that's the shall we say, the motivation behind it. And with magnesium, it has two real problems that are preventing widespread utilization. One is the formability. So how we can take magnesium, particularly the sheet product, and make it into formable or form it into components that you could implement into vehicle design. So there's a significant effort in research in developing magnesium sheet metal alloys with improved formability, particularly at ambient temperatures. We can form magnesium at high temperatures, but that comes with a cost. So to get the formability achieved at ambient temperatures is one of the holy grail, so to speak. The other one then is corrosion control, because it is very electrochemically reactive, and so there's significant challenges there in protecting magnesium. So especially when you're considering multi-material lightweight vehicle architectures where you have to join magnesium to other metallic materials such as aluminum alloy components or steel components, that there's a significant galvanic corrosion issue that needs to be addressed. So Gare, I'll pass it to you now. I'm sure people are tired of hearing my voice.
Yeah, there's some interesting questions that still need to be answered about magnesium corrosion. Unfortunately, I've got a sign coming up saying my internet is unstable, so forgive me if I start sounding a bit like a Dalek here. But there's some unusual characteristics about how magnesium corrodes. For example, the more you force it to corrode, the more you polarize it anodically, the more of the cathodic reaction happens. So that is really difficult to reconcile using standard sort of theories on electrochemistry. So that is one of the big questions that still needs to be answered in magnesium corrosion research. And this issue of its tendency to corrode, when you look at its electrochemistry, it's probably the most reactive metal that's used for structural applications. So a standard reduction potential for magnesium of nearly minus 2.4 volts. So any other metal, or most of the metals, are more noble than the magnesium, and consequently, anything that you alloy magnesium with usually makes it corrode faster, apart from a few things.
Are there any industries where its ability to corrode faster is actually useful? For example, like the biomedical community?
Yeah, sometimes, magnesium is highly bioresorbable, I would guess. So you can, I know stents are made from it. And the challenge there is to actually make the magnesium corrodes in a reproducible way where you can actually work out how long it will take to actually be bioresorbable. So there, it's probably tuning the corrosion rate to give you the right kind of characteristics. So in that case, it's maybe not making the magnesium corrode or making it very corrosion resistant, but tuning it so that you get the corrosion rate to be exactly what you want.
Yeah, and then there's the classic application of magnesium, right, as a sacrificial anode in cathodic protection systems. So it's come a long way from being a material that we're sacrificing to protect others to being a material of interest for things like structural applications, or, as Garrett just mentioned, these biodegradable stents. So that's kind of the forefront of magnesium alloy consideration.
Yeah. Also, in energy storage, there are now more and more sort of applications of either metallic magnesium in sort of seawater type batteries, or secondary cells, rechargeable ones using magnesium technology as well. So there's a bit more interest in that field as well.
Are there any other industries? I know we've touched on automotive, biomedical. You're now talking with the energy storage. Is there anybody else that is using magnesium alloys?
Well, tied to the automotive industry would be the aerospace industry.
Right.
So a lot of more use of magnesium alloy castings than of wrought products there.
Yeah, that's the one I could think of as well. I know it's used in helicopter casings, etc. But apart from that,
Those are the main ones.
yeah.
Well, the electronics industry too, I suppose that they make strategic use of magnesium, particularly for lightweighting of the components.
As I mentioned again, we have our February issue focused on some of these different areas of magnesium research. Would y'all like to highlight a few of the articles or topics that we cover in this issue? What some of the research that people can find on these different areas?
Okay, well, let's start off with the first couple of papers. They're both authored from the University of Virginia. One of them we know quite well. It's to do with the use of germanium, alloying the magnesium. There are a few approaches to try to improve the corrosion resistance of magnesium. One of the ways is to coat it with something, an inorganic coating or an organic coating, to try and resist the environment getting to the magnesium surface. But another way is to actually make the magnesium intrinsically corrosion resistant by alloying it with something that can either moderate the cathode reaction or the anode reaction on the magnesium surface. And one of the papers from the University of Virginia, authored by Dr. Glover, Carol Glover, is one to do with alloying with germanium, which appears to mitigate the so-called cathodic activation of magnesium that is usually observed in chloride-containing solution. There's another one, again, related to that subject of cathodic activation, that looks into immersing high purity magnesium in different environments, including chloride, and studying how much of the cathodic activation phenomenon is actually observed. And it seems to be something that's prevalent in chloride containing solutions, but not much observed then in buffered solutions where you don't form a coherent oxide film. So we've got, those are two of the interesting papers that we kick off with in this special issue. Anything else that's taken your interest, Joey?
Yeah, well, it's sure, we've had those papers that focus on mechanistic aspect, but then we also move into some more technical issues, such as coupling of dissimilar magnesium alloys that could find its way into lightweight automotive vehicle design, for instance. And the paper written by Sebastian Thomas down at Monash University, where he was applying the scanning electrochemical microscope to better understand galvanic interactions between dissimilar magnesium alloys. I thought was particularly interesting, maybe because I was a co-author, but who knows? There's a shameless plug there. So that was really interesting, but also a paper by Rajiv Gupta, who was looking at ball milling new alloys of magnesium and studying their initial, almost as a screening study, I guess, a screening study of corrosion resistance. So some new insight was provided there. And then even into, I'll give a shameless plug again to the paper of my graduate student, Basim, who was looking at lithium carbonate coatings as a alternative pretreatment for corrosion control. ZEK 100 is a sheet metal product, and there's a couple of papers that are devoted on the studying the corrosion performance of that. But getting back to Basim's paper with the lithium carbonate, so this is where he and taking some insight and innovation from the aluminum alloys, where they're using lithium carbonate additives into organic coatings for improved corrosion control, and then also piggybacking on the pioneering work that Nick Burbillis has done on alloying lithium to magnesium for improved corrosion resistance. So putting those two together in a form of a coating showed some really initial promising results in terms of an inhibitor study. So, and then there's also a paper on biomedical applications of magnesium in the body. So I think the applications are covered with automotive and right to biomedical applications, as well as mechanistic studies to more technical engineering corrosion control studies. So I think we've got a nice cross section of papers in there.
Yeah, I'll give a shout out to a few papers from my home country, the UK. So we've got one from the University of Manchester, Michele Curioni. He's come up with a very ingenious way of both monitoring and controlling pH in an electrochemical cell, which allows you to look at the pH without needing to buffer the solution, for example. So he's got a way of dynamically controlling the pH with different electrodes in different compartments of the cell. And he's able to show some preliminary results on how pH can be changed and how this can affect the electrochemical behavior of magnesium. There's another one, again, plugging. I'm co-author on two papers both from my former students. So there's a paper from Ron Clark of the National Nuclear Laboratory, where they were interested in looking at the localized corrosion behavior of Magnox. Magnox is a magnesium aluminium alloy that was used in the early nuclear reactors of the UK. And of course, there are legacy materials now that need to be stored, which consist of this Magnox alloy. So they're usually stored, for the radioactivity to dissipate in these ponds. So they want to know, what kind of tolerance limits of contaminating salts can these Magnox alloys withstand before they start corroding at too fast a rate. But also another piece of work that we've done, one of my graduate students again, Christos Kousis, looking again, Joey mentioned ZEK 100. So this paper is about using the scanning vibrating electrode technique to give you a bit of insight about the localized corrosion behavior of this particular alloy. Got any more there, Joey?
No. Being the fourth issue, though, and we're still focusing on mechanistic aspects, just shows you how much we don't know about magnesium and its corrosion. So, I mean, we're pushing the boundaries of our knowledge, but we still have a long way to go. So maybe a plug for a fifth edition of.
Yeah, not to leave anybody out. We've got a couple of papers from Germany as well. So one from the group of Sanne Virtanen about looking at a unified approach to measuring corrosion rates on WE43 magnesium alloy. But this is really to be able to measure properly corrosion rates of coatings for these alloys for applications as biomaterials. And we've got one from the guys in MAGIC, the Institute for Magnesium, where they've been looking at designing inhibitors for magnesium using density functional theory calculations, but then taking the inhibitors that they've sort of worked out might be good on magnesium and seeing if what they've worked out with DFT comes into practice when you actually dose these inhibitors into a solution, corrosive solution, where the magnesium is immersed. We've also got another, try to work out which one I haven't mentioned so far. There's an atmospheric corrosion paper from Mohsen Esmaili from now in Sweden. So he's looking at the effect, especially the effect of carbon dioxide in the environment on the atmospheric corrosion of a few industry standard magnesium alloys, and coming up with a theory that CO2 isn't detrimental, it's actually beneficial. So it reduces the corrosion rate of these magnesium alloys. So global warming isn't all bad.
That's good to know. So it sounds like we have, as Joey mentioned, there's a lot of mechanistic areas y'all are still looking at, y'all in general. Really, where is additional research needed? What areas have we only been scratching the surface of? Where do you think we're going in the future?
Well, one of the things I've been involved with for the last couple of years is trying to understand how paint systems actually work on magnesium alloys. Because a lot of work has been done on characterizing the corrosion of magnesium when you say immerse it in some kind of corrosive environment, or when the bare metal is left in a corrosive atmospheric condition. But very little has been done in trying to understand what happens when you paint the magnesium alloy and leave it corrode, leave it out in a real situation to weather, for example, what happens. So there's a lack of understanding about how organic coatings actually protect magnesium surfaces and what can be done to those organic coatings to try and improve performance, for example.
Yeah, and just to build on that with the coatings. So coatings is viewed as probably the best bang for the dollar for corrosion control of magnesium. And so that's where the focus is going to be placed going forward with corrosion control. And just with my experience in the automotive industry, having a coating system that would be compatible not only with magnesium, but also with aluminum and steel in these multi-material designs. So if you can have one universal coating scheme that you can apply to all these metals and not have to deal with magnesium on its own, would be huge to the industry and increasing the interest in getting more magnesium into the vehicles. But getting back to the materials themselves, or the alloys themselves, at least the sheet metals and for the most part, a lot of the castings as well, the form of the corrosion on magnesium is unique. It propagates in very conducting electrolytes as this filament type of corrosion that propagates laterally across the surface. So it doesn't so much go deep into the metal, but more so across the surface. And then it can reinitiate after that first corroded surface has been removed, and then remove material through the thickness that way. But this is interesting from a coating perspective. So if you have a defect and then these fingers this filament corrosion starts to happen, you can imagine a situation where these coatings can then pop off because the interface is compromised. So really getting a handle under what's driving that filament corrosion mechanism is to me, in my mind, a big research challenge for magnesium alloys. So Garen and I have collaborated on a few alloys studying this filament-like corrosion, and we've got some circumstantial evidence that's suggesting that alloying does play a role in controlling the rate of that propagation. So trying to understand what that role is, how aluminum affects it differently than zinc, and then from zirconium and so forth. So these are the things that require some attention from a mechanistic perspective. And then there's always the cathodic activation and getting consensus on what the underlying mechanism is for that, and then how do we control that intrinsically in the alloy. So these are some research directions that I'm thinking about personally, and would engage more interest in the scientific community to resolve these mechanistic issues.
So it sounds like there's still a lot of work to be done. Keep y'all busy for a few more years, right?
Definitely. Yeah. Magnesium is a corrosion scientist's dream because it corrodes so quickly. So you can do a lot of work in a short space of time compared to other metals, which, shall we say, corrode a lot less rapidly.
When I first arrived at McMaster, one of my colleagues said, "You're working on magnesium, huh?" Says it's the material of tomorrow, and it always will be. So we're going to hopefully try and change that, make it today's material.
Yeah. Yeah.
Make it today's material that lasts for a long time.
That's right. That's right.
Well, we're coming up on time. Do either of y'all have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Other than get a hold of this special edition, you won't be disappointed.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a very good read.
I'd like to thank everybody that got involved, actually, because it's been a difficult year, shall we say. We're actually getting all of the authors to engage and actually submit. So we've actually got a few more papers in this special issue than we had in the previous one, I think. So thanks to everyone that managed to get their act together and actually submit some very readable and informative papers.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
If anybody wanted to follow up with you later, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Email works just great for me. My email address is kish, KISHJR @McMaster, MCMASTER.ca.
Yeah, I'm the tried and trusted as well. Email is the best to get hold of me. It's geraint.williams@swansea.ac.uk.
Fantastic. And for those listeners that want to learn more about the corrosion of magnesium alloys and to check out all these great articles that the guys have been talking about, please visit corrosionjournal.org to read our February issue. And with that, I'm Sammy Miles, and thank you for listening to another episode of Corrosion Journal's interview series. You can subscribe to AMP podcasts if you haven't already on Apple, Google, Spotify, and all the major distributors. If you want to learn more about the journal, make sure to visit corrosionjournal.org. You can also find more information on AMP's website at ampp.org. And we'll be back with another episode of Corrosion Journal's interview series right here at AMP.